you everyone for attending. Thank you, Sumit, for I know it's very early for you, so we really appreciate you being here and having this talk on memoization. This is HackBuddy. We are an online meeting group of software engineers of all levels. We're offering a supportive, inclusive community where you can learn, collaborate, and grow our skills. We've been offering workshops now for, I guess, 11 years. It's a great way to learn new skills, stay up to date with trends. We're trying to grow a community on Discord, in which, in fact, I will, if you guys aren't on it, I will drop this in the chat for everyone. Maybe, hold on, there we go. There we go. That is our link to our Discord. I'm trying to drop more resources. We're trying to do more workshops. I know something that someone's been pushing more CSS animations, so hopefully we can get a workshop on that. Also, Wednesday, August 2nd, we will have another meetup on Vue.js, past, present, and future with Alex. So that should be a lot of fun. But again, thank you all for attending this meetup. I'm very excited to pass over Sumit, and we can learn about memoization. And yeah, go ahead and take it. Thank you, Sumit, for attending or for coming.
Thank you, Adam. I'm happy to be here. Just let me quickly set up my presentation. Okay, I hope everyone can see the slides.
Yes, we can see them.
Okay, welcome everyone. So I'm totally intrigued by, the React states that introduced in 16.8 and, how to utilize different hooks and memoization techniques in React applications. So we are always looking to optimize our performance. I know that it's been happened to me. I used to work with a company called Western Union, and we had to build an application for 2G network. So it was a remote kiosk machine, and I remember I spent a lot of time, months, to trying to find the techniques. So yeah, that was in a different framework, but I still try to find times, go through the code base and see what are the things I can optimize for it. So I'll introduce myself. I'm a senior software engineer working as a technical lead for a front-end team at RedHat. We are managing partner applications. So I have a total of 9 years of experience, but I started working with React very recently. Yeah, so let's go through. So today we have different sections. So we'll talk about what is state, what is memoizations, if you're not aware of, and then we'll talk pros and cons about each of methods, and then we'll try to have a comparison and best practice based on my experience, what we should do. Okay, all right, let's jump into it. First, before talking about React state and memoization, let's talk about how the React rendering and re-rendering works. So in React, every re-render starts with a state change. So let's say you have a state, the state is passed down to a child component, and so on and so on. So it's like a cascading effect. So you change something in the state, it's going to affect all the child component, even if it's you don't want to re-render those component, it's still going to re-render everything that is being consuming that state so far, but we don't want that, right? Yeah. So it's like what I would say, it's a photo session. Something change, React is going to click picture of every component, even smallest component you have, and going to club together by comparing the change, the current state, and the next state is going to change. So what about when we talk about state, we also talk about props. What about props? So does they matter? To be honest, in optimizations, I know a scenario where you can find about the props, how they are affecting the rendering or the performance. We will talk about in further slides, but not really. We are not talking about props here. We're going to focus on the React or the state management so far. We couldn't care about uh, the props at this time, so it's all sweet state, right? So even contacts, contacts is also it's affects re-rendering. It's still a state management using a different type of hook. With the contacts, we are aware that our state is has the same data as is being shared with different components. So right. So let's talk about state. Yeah. Yeah, this is the drama queen. So what is state? State is like holding your data into a component. Let's say data, your component is rely on something, and it manipulate that data. So you are going to create a state for it. You have event happening on your component. You want to store and change of those event into something. So that's why we use state. You can use your local state. You can create state at your each component, but also you can create a parent state, and that's pass it as a props, and that way you have to find functions, callback functions, to modify the parent state itself. To be honest, when to use a state at a local component, and when is to use the state from the parent, I would say strive for building up pure components. So what is a pure component? These are higher functions, can be passed as a parameters. Sorry.
Sorry, someone's mic might have been on. You're good.
Okay. Where were we? I thought I'm sharing something different. Okay,
You're good.
so yeah. So we were talking about how to use a global state and how to use a local state. So strive for building a pure component. So how do you know your component is pure? So well, I would say it doesn't have side effects. Let's say, what are the side effects? Side effect could be anything that you do, calling a network, set timeout. These are mutations. Every type of mutation you write to a network log or something that is happening, asynchronous calls, everything that is mutation. You should either way use a proper hook to handle it, or otherwise, if your state depend upon your component state depend upon it, handle it at the component level. Either way, leave it for the parent to implement it, I would say. Excuse me. So yeah, this is a basic syntax for how you write a state in React. State refer to data that component holds and manages. It can be thought of as a memory of a component holding information that can change over time, right? So if you talk about props, those are like something it can be viewed as a state of a parent, but the parent manages it. The child is just consume it or maybe re-render based on the change of it, right? So the state allowed dynamic user interface to respond to user inputs or the other events. That's why we need it. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Yeah. What are the problem with state? Let's say we had a I'll go back. Okay, let's say we have one state and then we have another state. We have email, then we have username, then we have password, then we have first name, last name, and the address. So it's you end up creating a lot of state just to handle a simple form, all right? So it's called complex hierarchy, right? So issue with the React component, it can lead to a lot of unnecessary re-rendering. So like we talk about, if a state change, it's like a domino effect. If it change, it's going to affect all the children's and even a small part of the UI, which doesn't need to be changed. It's just a text somewhere used in your like a footer or something, and it's still going to re-render those parts also. Yeah, that's the one issue with the state. And another issue I have seen, as your project grows and your state, it becomes complex, right? So you don't have only one or two field. It doesn't limit to that. As your project, or if you have seen enterprise applications, it's a total mess, I would say. um Even to have a look at the state, and even I struggle every day how to define a proper state mechanism. It's day-to-day challenge. So yeah, this is um the I have displayed the code. The picture, this one, state, two state, red state, blue state. Managing excessive data can be very tangled mess, and we will explore further how to avoid these traps. Yeah, apart from these, we have other issues which state presents. So one, we have talked about complex component hierarchy. Like as the application grows, the managing state across multiple component, it's become challenging and leading a tangled web of data flow. So you don't know what to change and when it to change, and if you're going to change something, and what is going to affect, what component are going to re-render. You have to look at profiling. You have to use other tools to find out that and see how you can avoid that. Second issue is synchronization issue. So ensuring the proper synchronization of the same state between different component, it becomes very complex. That's why I said, if you're managing state at each component level, then you won't be able to synchronize those states, because your state is managed by a different component. You are not going to change your parent state and then trigger a function to change another component state. That's why you have to find a way to keep your state. So that's one of the problem with state. We have talked about performance. Yeah, that's the main reason we are talking about, because excessive state also can use to unnecessary renders. And managing excessive number of state across various components lead to code-based complexity and maintenance difficulties. That's one of the issues. We have talked about prop dealing, right? So we have to manage your state, and then the parent state is going to affect the child one. So it's always become very cumbersome and lead to code clutter all the time. So yeah, so enter the React Memo. That's the hero of memoizations, I would say. So it saves a lot of re-rendering, the snapshots. We talk about like it's a photo session. So Memo is going to remember your previous snapshots and compare those. Let's say you haven't changed your position. It photograph is not going to click another picture of you. It's going to reuse the one he has already, and he's going to only click pics of let's say it's a photo session and different people are sitting and nobody moves. Then memoization is like remembering who's sitting there and then clicking no more picture. And let's say if one of the guys moves, the photograph is going to click that pic and going to create a collage with the existing picture, something like that. It's a magical concept, and I have talked about building pure components. So it's going to give us that leverage to create how pure components. Yeah, so you can create functional pure components using React.memo. And apart from that, you also can store your values into using React Memo. So if you have complex values, you are just going to save it. Let's say I have a chart, big chart, and I'm going to do a complex computation on it, on a big data, and then build a small array of data points and render that chart. But I don't want to do it every time something change in my component state. So I'm going to memoize that, remember what I've done in the past. I'm going to leave that, from re-rendering. Okay. So memoization is like a superhero, saving the day, preventing unnecessary data computation. And it's a cheat code for performance. But I would say be aware of the potential memory overhead and complexity trap comes with memoizations. Yeah, this is a basic syntax, how you use memoizations. Yeah, so this is like storing a result, and also if you are exporting your component, you can use React.memo and pass your component to make it a pure component. So let's talk about benefit. The memoization technique is used to optimize by caching a lot of results and expensive calculations and everything. So it's going to reduce the number of your re-rendering that happen into your component. So it becomes very smoother experience. One example where memoization can be useful is working with large data set, as we talk about, like building a graph, something where you have to do a very complex computation on data, and then you don't want to recalculate every data points on that graph. Let's say one of your data points change and it's going to affect one of the bar in the chart. That way, we don't want to recalculate the whole scenario. We are just going to update that index, and it's going to re-render that. But we have to use proper keys and right. So you cannot use a random key. So you have to use a very unique or IT key, and only that key data is going to affect. It's going to re-render that bar in the graph. Otherwise, if you are using let's say math.random and pass that as a key, right? We have seen these. So that has to be very unique and not a random. Let's say if my component is going to re-render and I'm going to assign a new key with it not going to work, right? Here comes the hook. Yeah, so React use memo is another hooks. We have two more hooks, which I would say is going to help with the whole optimization thing. We have use effects and use callbacks. Apart from use memo, these all three can be combined together to build a perfect optimization technique. But if you are going to build a state mechanism, so you are going to use reducers. We are not talk about building a complex states using reducers and context, but we are only talking about today the performance techniques. So I would say use memo, use effect, and use callback, all three. So but each hook, it has its fallbacks also. If you're going to overuse one of the hook, it's going to you're going to pay the price. So it's not like you can wrap up all your function into callback and use effect everywhere. Let's say event happening and it changes a state, and then you're going to use effect to manipulate the other state. So it's not a good practice, right? So yeah, let's talk about first use effect. Use effect is I have talked about building a pure component, and these pure component avoids um, side effects. Side effects could be a network call, API calls, a timeout. These are side effect, and use effect is the hook, which is going to help you avoid or handle these side effects. If you have API call, then you can use effect. You have a site timeout, or you can use it sometime to monitor a state change and trigger in that use effect. But I would say don't use that. If you have an event, use a event listener. Always use a event listener. Let's say your another input depends upon the first input, so don't go for use effect. So every input has a state change. It has a change event, event handler. Use those. You can modify your another state in that um, event handler, right? So we have talked about use memo, right? So third one is use callback. So what is the difference between use callback and use memo? It's almost similar to use memo, I would say. But instead of memoizing values, it memoize callback functions, right? So in JavaScript, everything functions. Let's say you have two functions. Those two functions, if JavaScript is going to compare, it's going to compare by the reference. And if I have even similar body for functions, it ditto. I have copy pasted it. It's still by the comparison going to give you false. And how does this the fact relates to our performance issue? So a lot of the time as a props you pass functions, and with every re-rendering, these are the props we are talking about. I told you that there's one scenario where we have to talk about props in performance optimization. Yeah, this is one of those scenario. So while re-rendering that component, it going to recreate that function every time. So it's the same function, but you don't want to do that, let's say. So that is where we use callback to memoize those callbacks. It's not going to create a new function every time it re-renders. So when to use use effect? Let me stop sharing. I think I have some issue. I have to refresh. So I made some changes. I think recently those are probably might not be reflecting back. Okay. It's my SSO. Give me 1 second. I'm going to re-log in to I'm using a VPN right now, and sometime it's gets logged out.
No worries. For those that weren't here, I will, let's see.
I have to find the slide.
In case anybody didn't get it, I dropped back into the chat the Discord invite for HackBuddy. If you haven't joined, I would suggest to join. We're ramping up and trying to help everyone out. So
Okay. Yeah, quickly where we were.
very good.
I think we were on when to use effect,
Yes.
right? Let me find. Yeah, this is the slide we were on. I'm really sorry about this. This happened to me if I logged into a session. I woke up early, logged in, and I want to go through the slides before I present, because in the night I didn't have the time. Yeah. So like when to use effect, we have talked about to avoid the mutation and side effect. Those are like fetching data from the API, set timeout, those kind of a thing. And when you are going to destroy your component, it's going to destroy itself on mount, and you want to clear some caching there. So it's kind of help you with the cleanups also. With every use effect, you will find a return statement, and you can do something before the component going to unmount. Let's say you have created a variable and it's going to storing a large array, and you are aware that once this component is rendered, and we are not going to reuse this component again, and I want to kind of clear that object, otherwise it stays in memory. Either we use it or not, it's stored by reference. It's going to keep that in memory somewhere. So before your component get destroyed or get unmounted, you want to either way assign null value to that object. That way you clean up, or you have a subscribe event listener, and you want to unsubscribe because you know that apart from this component, you are not going to use it anywhere else, right? Excuse me. So yeah, so that's cleanup event. One thing, another thing you can do is to subscribe. Yeah, if you are going to unsubscribe, you have to subscribe somewhere. That is good place to use effect to subscribe those event. Okay, let's go to the next slide. When to use memo. So we have talked about it, similar to use callback, and use callback is similar to use memo. It's both accepts a array of dependencies. So if something is going to change in that array, that way it going to recalculate, memorize that written value again. Otherwise, it's going to keep that as it is, not going to affect any rendering. Right. So we have talked about, you have a expensive computation, you have a big data, you loop through it, filter through it, build another set of data points to display as a table or maybe as a graph. That is one scenario. Second is you want to cache the result. That's still, if you want to cache the result, you can use it. But remember, you cannot use it for every small variables. So you have to find the big chain of variables. Let's say your prop is going to give you a large number of array. That time only you use it. Otherwise, if you're going to use it for every small variable, if you're storing a simple number and you're going to use memo for it, I would say you have hovered and so it going to give you kind of what I would say, it going to be my slideshow. It going to be very slow motion, rendering. So don't go overboard. Yeah, and another thing, yeah, computation we have talked about. You have complex data structures or calculation depend upon any. If it's depend upon props, you can use it. If depend upon state, you can use it. To be honest, if I have seen my data, I haven't found a use case for using use memo. Only in some scenarios where my API fetches a big data. I'm using network caching, kind of browser caching, rather than caching at my component level. So yeah, that's one scenario. So I would say you have to find on your own. Let's say when to use memo. That's up to you. The use callback hook, right? So we talk about, it returns a callback function, memorize that it still takes a array of dependencies. If something changes, then the callback is going to change only then. Okay, you want to, what are the scenarios you want to use it? When you want to prevent unnecessary function recreation, in like we have talked about, JavaScript uses the comparison by reference, so that way you don't want to recreate those functions again. There are some scenarios, situation which you will feel like you don't want to, your function has an internal state, let's say, and every time your component re-render the state is also get reset to something else. That's one scenario you will find. You can also memorize event handlers or any callback function back to your parent. You can use that. That's perfectly safe. You won't be going overboard with use callback. You find anything, a function comes from parent, you use callback. Okay. Okay. When not to overuse. So don't use effect for little things. Right. We have talked about it's reserved only for side effects. Side effect could be network call, um, listening to or subscribing to events or cleanup events. Those are the scenarios you want to use effect. Otherwise, for every small thing, don't use effect. When not to go overboard with use memo. So only memoization when performance gain is significant. You want to you are very certain that this API is going to give me a large set of data. You are very certain of that. And then based on that data, you're going to do some filtering. If you are very certain, then only use memo. Otherwise, it going to overcomplicate your app. I'm sorry. My body is still getting used to the morning. Yeah, it's kind of a chilly. No, it's already 9 a.m. But yeah, you work late, I'd say. So when not to use callback function, don't use it for every function you have in your site. Okay. So you have function, lot of function in your component. You have event handler. Let's say your event is getting triggered multiple times. That is scenario where you can use callback. And another is where your function identity matters, right? So you don't want to recreate those function with every re-rendering. Those function are passed from a parent to a child. That is the scenario where you use callback. Okay, we have talked about tree hooks, when to use them, when not to use them. We have talked about creating pure component. So it's like a snapshot. If you can wrap your functions in use memo, right? It is going to allow you create pure component. This is very useful if you're certain that your component handle all the side effect. It doesn't have you can wrap that into use memo. So it's going to take a snapshot, and that component is used very frequently. So in that scenario, right? So your component also does a lot of internal work. It has very complex logic and everything. So I would say wrap that component into use memo. It going to create a pure component for you. And yeah, that's the scenario you want to optimize. Okay. We are at the conclusion. So this is a very theoretical class. If people are interested, we can sometimes schedule a kind of a code walkthrough. We can build the code and monitor the code using profiling. So I would say there's a React component profile in DevTools, React DevTools. Use it, I would say. So it's this state versus memoization. It's a very old scenario. People are discussing it from like I would say even I didn't know the React that time. Since the launch of React 16.8, the hooks are introduced. Hooks are very useful. I found it very easy to work with React after the hooks. Before building a class component is something I never wrapped my head around. But yeah, so we have hooks. You want to add something, Adam? So you have any?
No,
Nice.
the hooks are good. Yes,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. So it did help me, onboarding the React, and I'm still every day try to find out perfect use case for every hook. It's not like you can just put your hooks everywhere. You have to be very careful. Otherwise, there's two things. If you don't use them properly, you are going to cause rendering issues. If you use them, you go overboard with them, you are going to cause some um, memory issues. Okay, so you have to find a very strive a perfect balance. It's a delicate dance, my friend. Use state for dynamic data that are truly affects your UI. Use profiling. See, the profiler will tell you on which state which component are going to re-render. Use it very carefully. It's our trustly companion. So go forth and find the harmony while creating React application, and where performance is very necessary. So I would say there are scenarios where you don't want to look at your performance, but it not always going to happen. At some point, someone is going to come to you that you have to build an application where your performance is truly matters. So that application is going to run on slow machine. Not all browsers are that effective. So if you are going to build let's say it's machines, in my scenario what I've done, if it's that hardware, very low level hardware, yeah, RAMs kind of a machine, then you are going to use these scenarios. So where you have heavy computations, excessive operations. Yes. And let's talk about bonus performance. Okay, performance optimization, the holy grail of React development, but beware, don't fall into this rabbit hole. If you are going to, let's say, going to optimize your application to a certain time, you want to render render your FCP, you want to within 1 second, 2 second, you can strive for it, but don't, I would say, fall into this trap. Only go when someone comes to your table, your manager, say you build this application, and some partner are complaining, they're threatening to back down if you don't optimize your application. That is the scenario. You totally consider these scenarios. And yeah, another thing, if you are measuring your performance, always do it in production mode, because it run faster in production mode, I would say. And another scenario would be with React 18, they have introduced mounting and unmounting your component twice. So if you are using React 18 and you want application, or you're using any hooks and it's getting called twice, you're using an API, or it's getting called twice in use of, you will see that that would be a wrong scenario if something happening multiple time in your, because what React 18 will do, just to the they are building some feature for the future. What they will do, they will mount and mount your component twice. They are going to mount it and mount it and then mount it, so your component get re-rendered twice, and you'll see something happen twice. API calls something, that way yeah, it's something wrong there. So if you found that, you can go for something like use SWR, where you call the API, it handle the multiple state for you. It handle the data, error, is fetching. These are the state you build custom hooks. So you don't have to build a custom hook. We haven't talked about custom hooks. Yeah, that's we can leave it for another session. So I would say test your application on lower end hardware. Just like a reality TV show contestant facing survival challenge, aim for 90th percentile experience. Don't go overboard or go for 100 percentile experience. It's not going to happen, and then you're going to regret why you get into this rabbit hole. There's no going back. Lighthouse, there's this Lighthouse performance scores. So yeah, you can monitor your app CP first, content, paint, those kind of a thing, but it can be very deceiving sometimes, because with my application I kind of using SSO. So first, my application is going to redirect to another portal, so where you put your credentials and come back to. If I'm going to use a Lighthouse for that, it is going to monitor the score for not my application. It's going to consider the performance, my application, along with the redirection iframes and those things. So trust your qualitative experience instead, right? So yeah, let's go for Q&A. All right, let's hear your questions related to anything, our state memoization adventure. I can provide you additional examples, clarification, or if you need, the code walkthrough, we can have, schedule another sessions where we can discuss, the actual scenarios, or we can monitor the performance of the application, all those things also. Yes, Adam, to you.
I had a question earlier. Let me find it. From Dave. He's so use effect with an empty or dependency array will run the component initially when it initially loads. And so he was asking, is there a similar way to make it run when the component unloads, or I guess unmounts? Or
Yeah. I mean, you have your use effect hook. So with the use effect, the last statement is a return statement. In that return statement, you write your logic where you unsubscribe, reassign your big variables to null values, or those kind of thing. You can use that.
makes sense. Nathan mentioned that one case that he used for use memo is with notifications component. So if it had an info success warning or error, or I guess, so that's an interesting use case.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, I think yeah, if you are using it is converting as a pure component, it's a perfect scenario. But in terms of, I would say, you are not recomputing or recalculating any logic there. So I would say if you're using just to store it as a state, I think I would say you can use kind of let's say notification hook is something where you add a notification, it shows for a second, and then it unhides. What you can use use effect. In use effect, you have ups. One of the side effect, let's say, is set timeout. It is going to stay in that state for a few seconds, and in that set timeout, you can remove that data from your notification state. So I would say rather than using use memo, go for use effect here. But if you're using it for pure building a pure component, I think, yeah, because the notification component is reused multiple time throughout the application. It's a good strategy.
Very nice. Does anybody else have any questions? I guess we can use the raise hand feature. That may be a little easier. Yeah, let's go with that. Oh, yes, Dave, go right ahead.
Yeah. I was listening to you. Oh, I'm pretty dark. Sorry, and I'm way down here. Hi.
You're good.
I was listening to you talk about the profiler, and you mentioned using it, but I haven't seen a lot of resources on learning how to use the profiler or the other React dev tools that are like down in that Chrome area. That could be a good topic for a future talk, if that's something that you're really comfortable with.
I use it. So where's the scenario I want to see? I have a state and I'm going to monitor that state. With the profiler, I can there's a flag you can set. You can see the re-rendering of each component. I can see the areas getting affected by that state. I'll find that this is the area I don't want my re-rendering to happen. I'm going to make some changes. So yeah, I think we can have a session about using profilers and the other, how monitoring the performance. So it's a good, how to, optimize your application, but you also should know how to monitor, the performance. Without monitoring, there's no optimization, right?
Makes sense. Thank you for the question, Dave. Does anybody else have a question? If not, I do have one. Sure, I guess I'll ask it while we're waiting. I guess, Sumit, in your experience, have you encountered, I guess, a situation? It kind of sounds like the whole moral of the story is, these are concepts rather than hammers. But I guess, have you ever seen a scenario in which too much memoization negatively impacts the performance? That it basically does the opposite of what, but probably because we were using it too much.
To be honest, it has not happened to me yet, because I don't go overboard with use memo. I mostly, if you would see lot of the application, only there's one component. There's very limited scope in your application. You will find that this is going to fetch a lot of data and you're going to recompile it multiple times. That is the scenario. I would say on the home page, on the dashboard where you display graphs, that is the one scenario I have seen it using. That's perfectly right. But I haven't, I totally avoid it unless I find it very necessary. So yes,
That makes sense.
So you have to identify the critical data and the frequency changes. So that's the way you can prioritize memoization efforts in those specific area.
That makes sense. Go ahead, Nathan.
Yeah, I think like one case that I like another case as well, besides like notifications, was like using like Google API call with maps, where I use like memoization, like use Memo for like the pin. So like your pin drop on the map and you want to keep it on that same point instead of having to make that call with Google and get charged again, right, for that call every time. That's when like, I think that's a perfect use case for that value to like have that stored. So then you don't have to worry about recalling the Google Maps API
Right.
for that.
Yeah, that's a perfect scenario. And apart from that, I would say build your own state management kind of mechanism using use context or something, where it would be kind of you're caching your result from the API you would find. So before you can build a custom hook on top of your API, what I would say. And every time you're going to call the API with some parameter, you can look into your cache you have built. So you can build LRU caching or something mechanism. You can use that. So you can look into the cache and you find something in that cache. You fetch it. Don't call the API because it happened multiple time. Your API is going to call back. Let's say if you zoom in, zoom out within the same map, you already have that data. You don't want to recall the API. So use a caching, but I don't know if you want to revalidate your cache again, because to be honest with the map, the data won't be changing much, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so you can use some kind of a custom hook with your own state management. Yeah,
I
that's
guess
perfect.
it might change if you were like, let's say you were searching on a certain category and then your pin was within that area, and then you'd have to like, maybe that pin then wouldn't be valid in that area. They would have to like recalculate then. That would be
Right.
the case.
Perfect scenario for use memo. You're recalculating yeah, by X or Y axis, I guess you're doing that. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's a perfect scenario. Totally worth optimization.
Very nice. Does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, to hear. I mean, different scenarios, and like Nathan, if anyone has a certain scenario they are using hooks for, please let me know. I would be happy to add those case studies somewhere. Maybe if I'm presenting to a future audience, it would be really helpful for me. Thank you, Nathan. Because we only learn by experience so much, and I have exposure to the certain type of application, I would say, and those are the case and scenarios. Okay, we have a question from Adrian. I mostly work on building application on, I would say, Linux applications. So right now we are building tools for partners. So we have partner, hardware partner, software partner, goes for you have seen ISV certification and hardware certified by certain organizations. So if you are buying a data warehouse or storage unit, it has to be certified with some kind of certification. Those are the certification are provided by my team, and then we build different tools to achieve those. And if you are building tool to achieve certification on hardware, on those hardware, you have to build applications. So there are different scripts you can go for. You can run those, but you don't know about what to test. So we have built an application. So you can install a very core OS or something, and then you, with one command, you can install that application, and it's going to analyze your hardware, going to fetch perfect test case scenarios, what to test on this hardware, and going to give you a report that, and that those reports are used by certification team. You can publish that on catalogs, redhat.catalog, right? So if you want to see the end result, what we do, you can go to redhat.catalog.com. And we are introducing, I think, container certification as well.
That's super cool. That's very cool.
Okay. Mike.
Yeah, this is Adrian. How are you? And first of all, thanks for doing this. I've used React in like projects of mine, or like I freelance software development, websites, apps. And so yeah, thanks for doing this, first of all. And yeah, I just didn't hear the exact name of the company or the link you said. Could you put it in the chat, please?
The
I
first.
think it's redhat.catalog. So these are,
Okay.
yeah. So
Yeah, that's fascinating, and that's really like I was wondering like how long have you guys been in business, and sort of what stage are you in? You know, are you guys like have a big customers? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, Red Hat, we have partners with Lenovo, IBM, Microsoft, AWS. We
Red Hat.
have,
This is the Red Hat.
yes.
Okay. Oh, amazing. Yeah.
So this is, I think this is a very old team. I rejoined in between. They already have this ecosystem. I'm just filling in space for building application, front-end application, where I focus building tools. So Red Hat catalog is something that is end result of what we do, but behind the scene, behind it, each type of certification, hardware is different, software is different, cloud certification are different. So each has to be tested in own way, and we have to provide a way to the partner that they are using proper tools to achieve those. They don't have to look for very details. Kind of, you can achieve it by using different scripts, comparing the performance of, let's say you are testing graphic card. So there are different metrics you have to monitor. You can do it your own, but if you are going for a certification by Red Hat, you have to achieve it by complying to the different test case scenarios. So it's like reading data from underlying hardware, passing it to the APIs, and then fetching up, test case which they are going to run. It's a lot of back and forth communication between machine and APIs network. Even some tools which works on offline also. We store the data in the machines, and they can use pen drives and something or connect to copy that file to a different hardware, then send it to teams for certification.
Wow. Amazing.
It's a totally different use case. Before that, I used to work for Western Union, the money transfer company. There I have a lot of experience with optimization. I would say we used to build application where if you are launching a partner in a country where they don't have a network bandwidth for 3G, some country they use 2G networks, and I did a lot of research optimizing. Most of the time it comes down to your first rendering. So if you are computing something behind the scenes still, and people are going to see the interface, it's rendered properly, they can have a ready to interact application, but you know that network is slow, you are still fetching the data, but do it behind the scene, that kind of application. So it's a different optimization, I would say. Where you only focus on first render.
Amazing.
All right. Anybody have any?
Yeah.
I'll limit to last question. Go ahead.
I see a comment from Michael. Yeah, totally. I mean, referential equality Even for big objects and even for functions, you can use both use callback and use memo. These are the two. If it's a function, go for use callback. If it's a value, go for use memo.
All right. If any, I'll leave it for. I guess that was a comment, so it wasn't a question. So I'll leave time for one more question, just so we can. But I think I'm hoping we got value out of this. I got a lot of value out of this. Thank you, Sumit, for doing this. It's much appreciated. And I think if we, if there is an opportunity, yeah, definitely come back with a code example. We can kind of get into the weeds. Kind of love doing that kind of stuff. And I'm sure there's
definitely
many people in the group who would appreciate it as well, being able to ask the questions with those kind of scenarios.
Yeah, this is my LinkedIn ID. You're feel free to, ping me. If you have something on your mind you want to discuss, totally get in touch. There are certain things I like to explore. Maybe while I'll talk with hack buddies, maybe there are different topics I'm interested in. We can have a session on those.
Yeah, definitely. Again, we're always happy, just like you, we're always happy to learn. We're I'm sure most of us have different experiences with software engineering. So any perspective is much appreciated.
Yeah, it's a community. Totally. I'm happy to discuss case studies. I'm happy to discuss, technology point or something you're interested in building. If it's even for, for the learning purpose, experimental something. I'm happy to join you, help you, or maybe learn from you.
Very cool.